Halo has always been a tough game to master, with each one of the titles having its own unique learning curve that's a little bit different from the rest, and that includes Halo Infinite. Now, it is one of the more accessible Halo titles, but it has a lot of depth hidden underneath the surface, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, and more specifically, how you can adjust your playstyle to improve your KDA. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you for checking out this video, and if this is the type of content that you enjoy watching, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. If you like learning and playing Halo, we've also got an awesome Discord community that you're more than welcome to be a part of. We do Halo nights and the occasional tournament, so you won't want to miss out on that. Alright, so first things first, what actually is your KDA? Now, most games use what's called your KD, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys already understand how this works, but for those of you that don't, here's what happens. It takes your total amount of kills from a game, and it divides that by the total amount of times that you died, right? Pretty simple. So if you died 10 times, but you also got 10 kills, you get a KD of 1. Makes sense. Halo Infinite actually handles this a little bit differently. They use what's called your KDA. Now, that's essentially the exact same thing with the addition of your assists. And this was first introduced in Halo 5, and it was kind of a way to show the importance of getting assists during a match. But 343 needed to find a way to incorporate that into your stats. So they decided that one assist would be worth a third of a kill, right? So how this gets calculated is they take your assists, they divide that number by 3, okay? Then they take that number, add it to your kills, and then they minus from that the amount of deaths that you got during that match. And the number that you're left with, that's your KDA. So what makes a good ratio then, right? Like, what's a good number to shoot for? Well, generally speaking, obviously if you're in the negatives, that's a bad thing, so you don't want to do that. But what you should try to do is you want to aim to have a KDA that's about half of the total amount of kills that you got in a game. Essentially, after all the math is said and done, what that means is the total value that you brought to your team is about twice the times that you died, in a matter of speaking. Now that we know how Halo's KDA actually works, let's take a look at how we can start improving yours. Obviously, more kills and less deaths, that's the result that we're looking for, right? And there's a ton of things that go into this, like, learning every weapon's rate of fire, landing your shots, getting good at the game's movement, these types of things. But a lot of that stuff can just kind of come along with time, right? You'll get good at it just by simply playing the game and practicing like that. But there is one essential skill that I think takes a little bit more effort than simply playing the game. And it's the number one skill that I think you need to upgrade your KDA, and that is positioning. Good positioning is all about knowing where to be relative to the other players, right? So knowing when to push, knowing when to back off, and this is really where your game sense comes in, because right from the start of a match, you should be thinking about what's happening and where so that you can move and apply pressure based entirely on that information. So the first tip for good positioning is to try to be cognizant of as much on-screen as possible, right? So how many of your teammates are alive, how much time until the power-up spawns, what the positioning of the enemy players is, these kinds of things. They're really important pieces of information, because when you decide where to move or where to stay, it should be entirely based on these things. When you're the only member of your team left alive and the rest of your teammates are waiting to respawn, most people wouldn't realize this, and they're just going to continue to push and continue to challenge all on their own. But if you're aware of this type of thing and you pay attention to your teammates and you know that you're the only one left alive, back off, right? Like, try to reposition, try to find a spot on the map where you can move to be more effective and more useful, right? Like, maybe you could try and head to where one of your teammates is going to spawn and then you could both go and challenge together. Maybe you could grab a BR and just play recon until your team is actually alive.
You've got to have an angle from anywhere bottom mid to finish that player. Your player who needs to start the flag run when there's 3 dead cannot be preoccupied with finishing the kill front base. And now just like that, Sentinels is starting to run with 2 dead.
Essentially, you just want to get good at assessing situations quickly so that you can move and reposition in the most effective way possible. The next thing is to try to play slower overall, right? Make your focus staying back and supporting your teammates. An example of this is on the map Recharge, where everyone is racing bottom mid right off the break to try to get to the camo first. If you watch any of the pro players like Lucid or Frosty, their focus is never to get there first, right? They always stay back, and try to apply the right amount of pressure to help their teammates come out on top, and then as a result of that, they get the camo.
On recharge, especially if they can get the shock rifle into their hand, and already a good start for FaZe Clan as Renegade gets taken down.
Always good to take down Renegade at any point in the game. Stella going to pick up one though, Penguin going to pick up another, and now all of a sudden FaZe starting to fall apart a little bit. The opening strategy will be won by FaZe initially, however, a very, very important kill coming in to make sure that camo didn't get picked up. It didn't get burnt either. I think that camo's actually still down. You can see it glowing there in front of Bound, so it's still a scrap for the power-up here. Falcade picking up one is going to allow Bound to finally moving on that power-up, but there's Penguin. There's a bit of team fire.
You should try to incorporate this as much as possible into your own playstyle, because this subtle shift in how you approach situations can have a huge impact on your overall performance. Another thing that can help with your positioning is actually knowing where the different spawn locations are on each one of the maps. Now, I already made a video talking about this a while back, but I do think this is important, so I'm going to reiterate a little bit here. It takes a bit of time to actually memorize where these different spawn points actually are, but essentially this is how it works. So when someone dies in Halo Infinite, they have a 10-second cooldown before they actually respawn. During that time, during that 10 seconds, the spawning system is trying to determine where to spawn that enemy player. Now, most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, that's going to be as far away from your team as possible, as far away from the enemy team as possible. Now, being that most of the maps are symmetrical, a lot of the time this is going to be in the direct opposite corner to where your team is most dominant. It's important to keep this in mind because being able to precisely predict where the enemy players are going to be is going to give you a huge advantage, and it's going to allow you to always be one step ahead. The biggest thing with good positioning is spatial awareness, right? It's easy to get sucked into the trap of getting that tunnel vision where you see an enemy and all you see is an opportunity to kill, right? When you're in that situation, before you decide whether to engage or not, you need to make sure you have all the necessary information. This is what I mean when I say play slow. It's not about physically moving slower, it's about using your brain to assess situations before you actually make a move. It might take a while before you actually get good at this, especially if you're trying to do it quickly, but it is a skill that you should try to develop as much as possible.
46-47, now 47-47, tie, game 3 to go.
Still has a rocket to play with. The overshield's coming up as well. There's a back. No! He gets taken down, but there's a teammate there to trade it out. Final 2 kills of the game. Spartan taken down to about a third shield. Pressure coming onto him as well. Formal trying to move in to finish off these kills. Rain stays alive. Spartan trying to cover his teammates. Ianite trapped in the base, and I think Frosty might have just moved in to pick up an overshield. Yes, he has. He picks up a kill and he picks up the win.
Unfortunately, Halo Infinite doesn't actually have a way to track a global KDA. It only tracks each match individually, so it can be really hard to base how good you are as a player just on that alone. But there is a website that you can go to that's going to give you a ton more detailed information, and I've put a link to that in the description box below. Once you're on the website, all you have to do is enter your gamer tag, and it's going to give you your match history as well as your stats. But the one that we care about the most is your average KDA, because this is basically the best representation that you're going to get as to whether you're getting better or if you're getting worse, because they take all of your match history, every single match that you've ever played, and they give you a global KDA based on all of that. So it's really important to keep an eye on that number because that's how you're going to actually track your progress. Alright guys, I really appreciate you checking out this video. If you think you've gotten something out of it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the things I've talked about today. If there's any tips and tricks that you've found helpful in improving your KDA, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.